Attention F1 fans. Seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton is experiencing one of the toughest moments of his career, and right in the middle of the Ferrari era. Is he in crisis? What's wrong with the SF-25? Why is Leclerc gaining half a second per lap on him? Today we'll tell you everything you didn't see about the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And yes, there are some statements that will leave you speechless. Lewis Hamilton didn't just qualify 7th for the 2025 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. He did so with a sense of relief that speaks volumes. For any other driver, getting into Q3 might be considered an achievement. But for someone with 7 world championships and over 100 wins, saying he's grateful to be in the top 10 is a true cry for help. The expression on his face as he got out of the SF-25 wasn't one of satisfaction, it was one of resignation. Hamilton didn't celebrate, didn't show anger or even frustration, just a cold acceptance of the result. And that's the most worrying thing. Because when the level of demand of a driver like him drops to that point, it means something much deeper is failing. In his post-qualifying remarks, Hamilton was clear, "It wasn't a spectacular last lap, but I've been improving throughout the weekend." This reveals that he wasn't even aiming for pole position or the top 5. His goal was simply to get into Q3, a goal that in his days with Mercedes would have been unthinkable. But the context explains everything. From free practice onwards, his performance was worrying. He finished in 13th place in almost every session, lacking pace, confidence, or connection with the car. The gap to his teammate Charles Leclerc was more than half a second, and that, in Formula One, is an eternity. It's not just a bad weekend. It's a reflection of a larger problem. Hamilton can't understand the Ferrari. He doesn't feel comfortable. He doesn't feel competitive. And that disconnect is affecting every aspect of his driving. This qualifying result wasn't an accident. It was the product of a worrying trend already seen in Bahrain, but which in Saudi Arabia has become impossible to ignore. Hamilton isn't competing with Verstappen or Norris. He's fighting to stay inside the top 10. And that, for someone of his stature, is a real earthquake. While Leclerc was getting the most out of the car and placing the SF-25 in 4th place, Hamilton could barely stay afloat. The comparison is direct, cruel, and overwhelming. Same car. Radically different results. This Saturday in Jeddah was the real wake-up call. The point at which the situation can no longer be disguised. Hamilton is on the ropes, and he knows it. His words, his body language, his on-track strategy. Everything indicates that this start to the season is far from what he imagined when he signed with Ferrari. This isn't the Hamilton who dominated the grid. He's a disoriented driver, trying to find his feet in an environment that doesn't yet belong to him. Qualifying in Saudi Arabia was more than a result. It was a message. A warning that adapting to Ferrari will be neither quick nor easy, and perhaps not even successful if things don't change soon. The words that came out of Lewis Hamilton's mouth after qualifying weren't those of a confident champion or a driver who simply had a bad weekend. They were those of someone who is lost. He literally said he was praying to connect with his car. It's not a metaphor. It's a brutal confession. When asked if he was confident of a better race result, his answer was clear: praying more like. He didn't talk about simulations, strategies, or race pace. He spoke of faith. He spoke of need. He spoke of a desperate desire that, for some reason, everything would just start working. That statement impacted the entire paddock like an earthquake. Because no one expects that from Lewis Hamilton. A driver known for his mental fortitude, his relentless focus, for that almost unwavering confidence that has driven him to win championships even in the most difficult moments. But in Jeddah, for the first time in a long time, he appeared vulnerable. Completely vulnerable. The most alarming thing isn't just what he said, but the tone in which he said it. There was no anger. No explosive frustration. It was a controlled surrender. An acceptance that he doesn't know what else to do to make things work with this Ferrari. He said that after Bahrain he felt positive. That he thought he'd found something. That he was thinking of implementing certain improvements for Saudi Arabia. But all of that failed. "I was hoping to apply some of those things, but it hasn't worked." That phrase sums up his situation with Ferrari so far. He tries things, nothing sticks. He feels like he's making progress, but each new circuit puts him back to square one. It's as if he's trying to put together a puzzle with pieces from another game. The most disturbing statement was another one, when he said he needed to go back to the drawing board. That expression is very significant. It doesn't just mean making adjustments. It means starting over. Redesigning from the ground up, rethinking his entire approach. And the hardest thing is that he's no longer in preseason. He no longer has time to practice. He's racing. He's scoring points, while trying to decipher a car that seems to speak to him in another language. Formula One drivers are experts at hiding emotions. But Hamilton didn't do that this weekend. He showed every doubt, every frustration, every moment of discomfort. Not just because of the car, but because of the situation. This isn't the debut with Ferrari he imagined. And every time he speaks, it's clear he knows it. These words don't just reflect a bad weekend. They reflect a deeper conflict. A champion who can't find his place in a car that, in theory, was supposed to be his new weapon. A team that sees its star signing become, for the moment, an unknown quantity. And a paddock that's beginning to wonder if this Hamilton-Ferrari experiment can really work. In Formula One, what you say in front of the microphones is just as important as what you do on the track. And when a driver like Lewis Hamilton says he's praying, it's not just an expression. It's a warning sign. It's a declaration of war against his own limits. And it's also an invitation to ask ourselves, will he be able to turn it around before it's too late? Comparing Lewis Hamilton to Charles Leclerc at this point in the season isn't just inevitable. It's mandatory, because they're in the same car, under the same conditions. And what we saw at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix leaves no room for excuses. It's a huge difference, and profoundly revealing. Leclerc qualified fourth, and did so with a margin of 0.531 seconds over Hamilton. Half a second. In Formula One, that's not a difference. It's a world of difference. A driver can lose a tenth due to a mistake, 2/10 due to a bad corner exit. But half a second implies a pattern. A disconnect, a structural imbalance. During free practice, that gap even widened. Leclerc was consistently in the top 5. Hamilton was stuck in 13th place. The gap wasn't closing. There wasn't enough progress. And most disturbingly, there weren't even any signs that the Briton could get any closer. The telemetry confirms it all. In turns 4, 5, 8, 9, and 13, Leclerc was clearly superior. He entered with more speed, took more aggressive lines, and exited with better traction. That can only happen for two reasons. Either Leclerc's car is better set up, or he simply understands it better. And in this case, all the evidence points to the latter. Leclerc has been with Ferrari for years. He knows every inch of the car. He's experienced multiple generations of the car, different technical directors, different engineers. He knows how it responds on each track, how it behaves with different fuel loads, with different tire compounds. And that familiarity translates directly into confidence. A confidence that allows him to attack in the most difficult areas, where Hamilton still hesitates. The difference isn't just technical, it's psychological. While Leclerc can focus on maximizing performance, Hamilton is still in the process of understanding it. Every corner is a test. Every session is a laboratory. And that, in Formula One, makes you lose valuable tenths of a second. That comparison is even more uncomfortable if we remember that Hamilton came to Ferrari as the big signing, as the piece that was supposed to elevate the team. But today it's Leclerc who leads at Maranello. He sets the pace, the one who sets the benchmark. Hamilton isn't just being outperformed. He's being stripped bare by his teammate. There's no damage to the car, no strategy errors, no on-track incidents to explain this gap. There's only one overwhelming truth. Charles Leclerc understands this car much better than Lewis Hamilton. And that creates an invisible but brutal pressure. Because within Ferrari, results aren't the only thing judged. Evolution is analyzed. And while Leclerc is solid, consistent, and sharp, Hamilton seems trapped in an adaptation process that just isn't making any progress. And that's what's most worrying. Because an updated car means nothing if the driver can't exploit those developments. Ferrari had prepared 2 different rear wing configurations. Leclerc used the biplane version. Hamilton, the more traditional one. A customized approach. 2 different paths to solving the same problem. One worked, the other didn't. Against this backdrop, Hamilton's strategy for the race was revealing. He clearly stated that he hoped to take advantage of external factors. That his plan was to be patient and wait for mistakes, yellow flags, or safety cars. He didn't talk about pace. He didn't talk about race pace or planned overtaking moves. He talked about waiting. That mentality isn't characteristic of a dominant driver. It's that of someone who knows they don't have the tools or the confidence to attack from the start. And that's not just a strategy. It's a tactical surrender. It's a silent message that says, I can't handle this car under normal conditions. I need chaos to have a chance. In a sport where control is key, relying on chaos is an emergency signal. Ferrari, for its part, continues to believe that these improvements have room for growth. The team's engineers were talking internally about a potential 30% increase in performance compared to Bahrain. But the truth is that for Hamilton, that margin has yet to materialize. And with each race that passes without taking advantage of these new parts, the gap to the leaders becomes a more difficult gap to close. Technical updates are the fuel for development. But if one of the drivers can't translate them into results, the team's progress becomes asymmetrical. Ferrari is evolving, yes, but only with one of its two operational weapons. And meanwhile, Hamilton tries to survive in a machine that still doesn't respond to him. At this point, the big question isn't how the weekend ended for Lewis Hamilton. The real question is, what happens next? The calendar doesn't wait. Formula One moves forward without pause. The opportunities to reverse a critical situation like the one Hamilton is experiencing are limited. Time becomes a silent enemy. And the adaptation to the Ferrari SF-25 not only has to be immediate, it has to be effective. Now, Ferrari is clear that its car has potential. Leclerc is proving it on track. The updates keep coming. And while some of them didn't have the explosive impact expected in Saudi Arabia, the team is already planning a new round of improvements for the Miami Grand Prix. Everything points to a more complete, more aggressive package, more geared toward extracting pure performance. But here's the real dilemma. If these improvements don't arrive in time for Hamilton to understand them, adapt them, and transform them into solid results, the season will slip away. He's already more than 50 points behind Lando Norris. Ferrari, as a team, finds itself with a deficit close to 100 points in the Constructors' Championship. The math doesn't lie. The gap isn't definitive yet, but every weekend without real results makes it harder to close. And then the pressure doubles. Because Ferrari isn't just racing this year. He already has one eye on 2026. The new technical era is approaching. And while some teams are already beginning to redirect their resources toward these new regulations, Maranello can't afford that luxury. Not yet. Not with their big bet, Hamilton, still searching for his place on the team. Internally, the struggle is twofold. On the one hand, they must continue pushing the development of the SF-25, keep Leclerc competitive, and at the same time offer Hamilton a car he can understand and control. On the other, they must decide how much more time they can invest in a recovery that still shows no clear signs of success. And in the midst of all this, Hamilton is facing his own battle. An internal struggle between expectation and reality. He came to Ferrari with the promise of a new era, of a motivating challenge, of writing the boldest chapter of his career. But what he's experiencing is more like a dead end. His talent is intact. His history backs him up. But even the greatest can be overtaken by circumstances they can't control. And that's what makes him more human, more vulnerable, and for many more interesting than ever. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix wasn't the end of anything, but it was a turning point, a moment where doubts outweighed answers. Where the questions began to feel uncomfortable even within the team itself. The next race could be the start of a comeback, or the beginning of a different narrative in which Hamilton and Ferrari discover that not everything is going as planned. Because in Formula One, speed isn't enough. You have to have direction. And right now, the big question is where it's really headed.